Welcome to Sleepover Cinema, where we analyze the films that created the collective unconscious of the girls, gays, and theys of the late 90s and early 2000s. I'm Hannah Leach.
And I'm Audrey Leach. We are the sister filmmaking duo also known as Two Pink Pictures, and we have not stopped thinking about these movies since we first saw them.
We're going to explore the good, the bad, and the nonsensical of the movies that first inspired our love for film in an attempt to answer the question, are these movies actually good? And at the end of the day, do we really care if they are?
Today, we are talking about 2004's Ella Enchanted. Woo!
Some fairy tales begin with once upon a time. Some end with happily ever after. And some just throw away the book. Meet Ella, thanks to a magical gift gone wrong. She's forced to be the most obedient girl in the kingdom.
Just admit you're stupid and don't know what you're talking about.
I'm stupid and I don't know what I'm talking about.
Now, on the road to finding her freedom, Ella's discovering an elf with an attitude.
Kick his butt!
An ogre with an appetite.
How do you like to be eaten? Baked? Boiled?
How about free range?
And a prince with a fan club.
Prince Charmant?
No, please, call me Cha.
Miramax Films presents The Princess Diaries Anne Hathaway.
Tell me, do you get a kick out of near-death experiences?
Hold on. Whoa.
Somebody to love.
Ella Enchanted.
Today, when we were planning what episode we were going to record, we established with each other, let's do a good one. Let's do one that we'll have a lot to say about with minimal strain. And Ella Enchanted really emerged as the top contender for that role.
Yeah, I was looking at the list, our running list, and I was just like, it just feels right. It really just, it feels like the right choice for today.
Yes. I haven't seen this movie in a really long time, as I will say again later, but I tried to expose myself to as little of the actual movie's content as possible leading up to this because I think this movie's really good. Like, yeah, my gut is telling me that it's really good.
Yep, me too. I haven't watched it in a while, but I know that I loved it. And we probably like when we got it from the library when we were younger, we were like very excited about it.
Yes, definitely. I think there's a lot about the culture of 2004 also infused into this movie, so I'm excited to talk about that. So let's just get into the facts of Ella Enchanted. So Ella Enchanted premiered on April 9th, 2004 in theaters. This movie, everything that I've gotten from it is that like the production of it was very English. Like there's a lot of English actors that are famous in it, but then a lot of American actors too, so very crossover-y. This movie was directed by Tommy O'Haver, and I looked up his body of work, and there really wasn't anything that noteworthy to me. I'm sorry to Mr. O'Haver, except for this movie called Get Over It, which had Kirsten Dunst in it and like Mila Kunis in the trailers from 2001. And it's this really weird teen rom-com where there are, in fact, random heavy-handed musical numbers in an in-world play. So that's some foreshadowing. Yeah. It was a little confessions-y when I was watching it. But anyway, I watched the trailer and I could not understand what the movie was about, even with that. So just keep that in mind. The screenplay for Ella Enchanted was written by Laurie Craig. Well, there's 5 writers attached to the project. The first one is Laurie Craig. She doesn't have a lot of credits either, except she did get a screenwriting credit for Ramona and Beezus, the one with Selena Gomez.
And Joey King.
I don't know who that is.
She's, she was in The Act recently. She plays Gypsy Rose Blanchard.
Oh, got it.
And she's in the Kissing Booth, that really
bad
yeah Netflix Sorry
Good
if
to know.
you like the kissing booth, but it's not the best.
It's not revered. All right, so anyway, that's Ramona and Beezus. So next on the list of people with screenwriting credits for Ella Enchanted, we have Karen McCullough and Kristen Smith. I think it's Kirsten Smith and I wrote it wrong, but anyway, they are the screenwriting duo behind Legally Blonde, The House Bunny, She's the Man. We just talked about them in our last episode covering She's the Man. So if you want to know more about them, you could Google it like a reasonable person, or you could listen to the entire She's the Man episode. The next person
Which
we
you
have...
should.
Well, you should. You should do that. You can still be reasonable and listen to the She's the Man episode. They're not mutually exclusive. The next writer we have is Michelle J. Wolf, who is a TV writer. She's written a lot of TV, but not a lot of other movies, and nothing she had written was familiar to me. So again, sorry to Miss Wolf. I just apologize now instead of shitting on people.
Yeah, we've really gotten to the apology stage of this.
Sometimes I'm just too dismissive, but there's so many people to talk about that I just want to keep it moving, you know?
Yeah.
And last but not least, the novel upon which Ella Enchanted is based is Ella Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine, which I know I read back in the day. I don't remember how good it was, but I'm thinking it was pretty good, but that I had seen the movie first, so that kind of like tainted my experience of the book a little bit, as it happens to work out a lot of the time.
Moving on to the plot synopsis. Ella is under a spell to be constantly obedient, a fact that she must hide from her new stepfamily in order to protect the prince of the land, her friend for whom she's falling.
Now, I just would like to say, this was the most simple plot synopsis I could find. I didn't want to give too much away. There's a lot in the movie, and a lot of the synopses were really long. So I was like, let's just keep it simple. And that is essentially what it is.
Her friend for whom she's falling.
I know, it's like, why do they have to put it that way? But that's how they did it. Would you like to read the tagline?
Yeah, so real simple, one and done, get enchanted.
I was like, is that really it? I was like clicking on taglines and that's it. Okay, so our simple tagline out of the way, here comes the cast of this movie, and I would just like to preface all of this with saying that there were a lot of recognizable people in this movie, and I wanted to include as many of them as possible, but I didn't want to spend a million years on each person, so I've done the Sleepover Cinema Classic, which is cherry-picking everyone's credits for things that we recognized, for the most part. So just bear with me, and if you are one of these, not if you're one of these actors, but if you're one of these people... I cut some people who none of their work was recognizable to me just because I was like, I'm bored. Okay, so first and foremost in the title role, obviously we have the star of the movie, Anne Hathaway, 3 years after The Princess Diaries. So she is very much in her, like, not her prime, because she's like still in her prime, but it was like early Anne Hathaway, which leads me to say she was just on Drag Race the other week and she looks exactly the same as she did 20 years ago.
Yeah, she's definitely got like a killer skincare routine.
Yeah, like she looks exactly the same, and that's just it makes me feel like time isn't moving forward, which is nice. Sometimes. Not in like the COVID context, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, so the movies that she's best known for, we already know. Princess Diaries, Devil Wears Prada, Les Mis, Brokeback Mountain, and the like. Moving on, we have Hugh Dancy as Prince Charmant, who is a hottie. He's English AF and a hottie. I didn't know this because I think I always just think of him as like the prince from Ella Enchanted, but he has been very, very booked on TV, like network TV shows. So he has been on Hannibal, The Path, Homeland, and The Good Fight as like a recurring character on all of them. So he's getting that money and those gigs, which is amazing. Then we have Cary Elwes as Edgar. Primarily, he is Wesley from The Princess Bride. that is really who he is. But he's been in like a million movies. And I also think it's interesting and kind of tasty that he was Wesley in The Princess Bride and now is the bad guy in Ella Enchanted, because they kind of feel like they're in conversation with each other.
Yeah, it's like a genius casting choice.
Yes, definitely agreed. I'm really excited to like see him in that role. Then up next we have Aidan McArdle as Slannon, and the name Slannon really rang a bell to me, so I wanted to include it because I know it's a big character, but he has been in a lot of TV and I recognize none of it, so sorry to Mr. McArdle. Next we have Joanna Lumley as Dame Olga, and I saw her, she's like an elderly English lady, and not elderly, but older English lady, and I was like, she looks so familiar, why do I know who she is? She was in The Wolf of Wall Street and Corpse Bride, but neither of those things were really connecting it for me, and then I realized that she is one of the mean aunts in James and the Giant Peach, the Tim Burton live action one. She's Aunt Spiker, if that means anything to you. Audrey has a face like, does that movie exist? It's not live action. The first like 20 minutes are live action, and then it's animated.
Oh.
No, you should rewatch that, because I watched it a few months ago and like it unlocked, you know those TikToks that are like, I'm about to unlock a memory you didn't even know you had? Like, that is what it felt like to watch it.
Yeah, I was like, wait, did I just like black out for an entire live action version of James and the Giant Peach?
Okay, we still have 4 more actresses here that are all very important, so I will press forth. I think the next one is the person I am the most excited about. We have Lucy Punch as Hattie. And you hear the name Lucy Punch and you're probably thinking, who is that? I don't recognize that person. Yes, but you definitely do recognize her. Some things you may have seen her in. She was in this show called Motherland, which I'm guessing is English. She was Esme in the Series of Unfortunate Events reboot, the Neil Patrick Harris one. She was also Lucinda in Into the Woods, which is one of the daughters of the Wicked Stepmother. And she also is in the 10th Kingdom, which I hope and pray that a Sleepover Cinema listener out there has seen the 10th Kingdom. Audrey, how do we even explain what the 10th Kingdom is?
Like, I'm literally at a loss for words just thinking about it. The 10th Kingdom is a made-for-TV, like, movie event, sort of. So it was, like, split up into sections, and it would air, like, periodically. But it is, like, 7 hours in total. So it's
like a mini-series before it was a thing.
Yeah, it's like a limited series, the way that they are now. And I don't even know how to go into it.
The way that I would explain it is like, okay, you know how on this show we're always referencing that we had this set of DVDs in our minivan and that we would watch the same movies over and over again? We had this miniseries in our car for like 10 years. And our mom had originally gotten it for us as like a long viewing for a drive to North Carolina. And she like kind of watched it, but kind of didn't watch it. So I don't think she realized that it was like really more like PG-13, and we were kind of young. Like, so over the summer we rewatched it when Audrey was still home. And first of all, Scott Cohen is in it, and he's like the first love interest of Lorelai Gilmore on Gilmore Girls, for the reference, and he's so hot.
Max Medina.
Anyway, yeah. The point of all of this is it's a fantasy miniseries where like the hero encounters it really what it is it's Once Upon a Time before Once Upon a Time.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Mm-hmm. But the point is that Lucy Punch plays Little Bo Peep in this thing, and the whole Little Bo Peep section is like really sexually charged because there's a werewolf and it's all like horny and uncomfortable, but it definitely it just like made a big impact on us. And the part that Lucy plays in Ella Enchanted is like very similar to the part that she plays in in the 10th Kingdom. It's very similar, so we're just excited to relive that. But I just love Lucy Punch because her typecast somehow is like medieval bratty bitch.
Yeah.
Like that's her typecast. How do you even have that?
Best typecast that anybody could ever ask for. Like,
yeah. She just brings me like so much joy, and I'm just really excited to see her do her thing in this movie. Okay, next person we have is Minnie Driver as Mandy. I mean, Audrey, when you think Minnie Driver, what's the first thing you think?
Phantom of the Opera. Joel Schumacher's Phantom of the Opera.
In which she lip syncs to opera singing the whole time. It's not even her voice that does the singing, because she plays Carlotta, who's like the diva extraordinaire. So obviously we think of Phantom of the Opera just because of who we are, but she was on Will and Grace. She was the voice of Jane in Tarzan, which I never knew until today. She's in this show Speechless. She's a very famous actress. She's also English, and I don't really know that much other than that. Next, we have Vivica A. Fox as Lucinda, who is, the name Lucinda has now come up twice, but there's two different Lucindas. This is the Lucinda in this is the Lucinda in Ella Enchanted. She's the fairy godmother. She's famous for being in Kill Bill, Independence Day, Set It Off. She's like an obviously famous person. She's also done a lot of random shit in recent years, like TV movies and stuff like that. She was also on Curb Your Enthusiasm. And last but not least, thank you for getting through this with me, but I really think it's worth it for this cast because it's like pretty amazing.
Me too.
We have Parminder Nagra as Arita. She is the lead in Bend It Like Beckham. The main girl from Bend It Like Beckham, which I didn't know, which totally makes sense now that I think about it. But yeah, so she was Jess in Bend It Like Beckham. She's still unbelievably booked to this day. She is on Blackish. She was on 13 Reasons Why, God Friended Me, LOL, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., The Blacklist, Psych, ER. All signs point to her being an absolute queen based off her body of work. And like I watched a few interviews with her too, and she just seems to be incredibly charming and compelling. So I'm excited to see her in this movie. Audrey, what about these critics? What do they have to say?
All right, so we've got a 50% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. Here is the critic consensus. Hathaway is a charming heroine, but the simple storyline gets overwhelmed by silly gimmickry.
Gimmickry.
The gimmickry, the shenanigans.
The gimmickry of it all.
And we've got two more critic opinions.
This critic opinion is really egregious. So you might want to put on your man voice for this one.
Okay. All right. Let me see if I can summon him.
Yeah, and this is Audrey will be playing the role of Stephen D. Greydanis of Decent Films Guide, and he's labeled as a top critic.
Great. Okay. Avoids a misstep common among girl empowerment flicks, which often emasculate the male lead to make the heroine truly heroic. Manages to make both leads appealing. What?
Basically, he was like, the man still gets to be a man in this movie for chicks. So, and for children, nonetheless.
Oh, I see what he's saying. Yeah. Stupid take. There's a lot of other things you could talk about. And then the third is from Ty Burr of the Boston Globe. And he says, an overcalculated fusion of Shrek and The Princess Bride with all the smarts replaced by smartass.
I don't know what smarts being replaced by smartass means, first of all. But I put this review in here because when I even looked at like a little bit of stuff for the movie, I remembered that Ella Enchanted does have like the extreme like cultural reference thing in it that like Shrek had, where it was like trying to make a commentary on like 2001 culture in like a medieval framework, if you will. So that's something to keep in mind. But the audience score was 57%.
Yeah,
which is kind of low.
Pretty good. Well, yeah, I was going to say there's only a 7% difference between the critic score and the audience score. So that's a lower it's like a higher score than we usually see for critics and a lower difference between the two than we usually see between the critics and the audience.
So we got the reviews, we got the cast, we got the information, but do we have the gossip yet? We don't. Audrey, what was the gossip?
Yeah, so I found some really, like, niche points here. I feel like the first piece of gossip from April 2004 is that Canadian singer Alanis Morissette stripped down to a nude suit when she was hosting an award ceremony in Edmonton, Canada. She was protesting at the increase in censorship in the US in the wake of Janet Jackson's earlier wardrobe malfunction.
Relevant, though, because the Janet Jackson quote-unquote wardrobe malfunction is really re-emerging into the discourse because of the Justin Timberlake stuff.
So our third piece of gossip is that actress Cate Blanchett gave birth to her son, Roman.
Roman.
So good for her. And
Great
the last
for her.
piece, which is very, 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 very crucial, is that both Mean Girls and 13 Going on 30 came out in the same month.
You know, we're just not doing it like that anymore.
No.
No one's doing it like that.
Unbelievable. That is crazy.
It's true. You know, Audrey, I feel like we're always talking about how we're the sister filmmaking duo. Where are the films? We could do it.
Where are the films? Well, you know, we are in a pandemic.
We are in a pandemic, but what I'm saying is I feel like the space is there for a good renaissance of this sort of movie. I feel like there's nothing like it.
Yeah, well, I think that they are trying. I feel like there are a lot of indie. They're not really indie because they're pretty well funded, but like they're not, you know, at this point in the film industry, you're either indie or you're Marvel. And almost all of the movies, well, some of them really were blockbusters at the time because the rom-com genre was still very alive and well in the early 2000s, but now we've seen like kind of in a similar way to like how the middle class no longer really exists, neither does the mid-size movie because there's just no balance. Like and so that this type of movie that used to thrive and they used to be able to make a lot of them, it doesn't exist. Yeah. And the ones that do, that are indie, are like I think of like Booksmart or there's a bunch of like girl best friend adventure movies right now that like are very like neon A24-ish, and it does kind of feel like an evolution of these movies, but it is lacking in like pure fun. And I think that's where that's the assignment.
Yes. I love how you just like brought in economics there for a second.
Well, that was
immersive.
This whole thing is economics. Film is
That's
economics. True. I mean, as much as we want to talk about art, at the end of the day, it really is business. So you've actually been listening to a business podcast this whole time.
It's just marketing and business. We've already been talking for quite a while here because there's so much to discuss, but let's just establish this before we move on and watch the movie. What are some things we remember about this movie from childhood? And both of us, I mean, it's been years and years for both of us since we've seen this, right?
Yeah. All I wrote for what I remember is that I know that the scene where Anne Hathaway's character is forced to be mean to her best friend, Anita, it made me cry. Arita, not Anita, sorry. Knowing that she had to do it, like she had no choice. It's so sad. And then secondly, the somebody to love scene made me feel weird.
I'm looking forward to discovering why it made you feel weird.
Yeah.
Most of the things that I remember about the movie, I've already kind of sprinkled into what I've said so far. Like her wearing blue, the Shrek likeness. I wrote that Somebody to Love is a banger, and I also didn't know that it was a Queen song until like several years after I had seen the movie. But you know, that tracks. Based off of our childhood and our culture as kids, it makes sense that we wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And then also, I guess this isn't really something that I remember, but just some things that occurred to me as I was getting ready is like, there's gonna be a lot in this movie to talk about like boundaries, like discussing boundaries and like advocating for yourself, and also like racism, I think a lot. So there will be much to talk about, and I am eager to see how this one is. Ella Enchanted is available on Amazon Prime free with ads, so you got that as an option.
Is this
maybe
not
you're
a
just
Disney
gonna dust
movie?
off? It's not. Amazon Prime free with ads. You can watch it there. Or you can dust off your DVD, or whatever you want. However, we're going to go watch it, and we will be back to discuss and unpack the classic of 2004, Ella Enchanted. We are back. We have watched Ella Enchanted, and the notes are aplenty. For those watching at home, you can see my clipboard here and Audrey's notebook, and we are ready to go. So much to say, so much to talk about, but let's start with the good stuff. So, the things we appreciated.
Ooh. I mean, there's a lot to appreciate here.
There is a lot.
Just to run through a few, some of the more simple things for me would be the concept of a medieval escalator.
Yes.
A thriving cottagecore aesthetic.
Yes.
Anne Hathaway's hair.
Mm-hmm.
And also drunk fairies.
Yes. Similarly, and related to Anne Hathaway's hair, just Anne Hathaway is just such a star in this movie in every single way. Like, great performance, great commitment, lots of willingness to be silly. It's like, you know, the RuPaul quote that's like, not to be quoting RuPaul on the pod, but you know the RuPaul quote that's like, your fear of looking stupid is making you look stupid.
Yeah.
This movie is like the opposite. It's like the opposite of this, because she's like not afraid to just like go there.
She's really giving me the energy of like the drama club kid who like actually is doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Like, is actually good.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. That is 100% true. Other simple things I had written down. Just the costumes in general are really, really great in this movie. They're really inventive. They're really colorful. They are simple, but lots of good fabric also. There's some unconventional fabrics that you don't normally see in like a fantasy movie that I thought were very enjoyable. I just really enjoyed the chemistry between Prince Char and Ella. The scene where they're like sitting in front of the fire in like the giant bar like is burnt into my brain.
Me too.
As just like wholesome and good, even though there were some elements to it that were not so wholesome that we'll get to later. But
let me just add something positive about Anne Hathaway and her dynamic with her male leads. It's literally her. She is the reason why it's good. Mm-hmm. The dynamic between her and Prince Char is the same dynamic as between her and Nicholas in Princess Diaries 2.
I had that written down.
And it's all about this enemies sexual tension thing.
Yeah.
Enemies to lovers vibe.
Yes.
And
yes.
It's like the boys always do a great job too, but like it's her that like she's bringing it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like that's what you look for in your leading lady in like a title star, you know, like that sort of control over the dynamic, I think is cool to see when it's established by a young woman star.
Yeah. And ultra side note, let's just give Chris Pine credit where credit is due for taking roles in movies throughout his entire career where he is in that role. He's in the backseat role to the female lead. To this day, like he just was in the new Olivia Wilde movie that just wrapped. Like Olivia Wilde is directing it, and she like wrote this Instagram post about literally that exact thing and Chris Pine, and I was like, I love him. Okay, anyway.
Okay, so now on the side, it's still good things I appreciated, but a little bit deeper. I really enjoyed that this movie passed the Bechdel test within the first 5 minutes. Literally, like, the women are the reason why the story works. So, and also just like, you know, at the beginning, it's her mom and it's the house fairy. And speaking of the mom, another thing I had written down is that her mom dies super early, but her mom still has a personality in the 3 minutes that she's alive. Like, you actually kind of get a sense of what she's like, even when she dies that quickly.
Yeah, and I was saying to Hannah, I was like, look at this little, like, co-parenting situation they got going on up in here.
Yeah.
It's like, I love
and
this.
I thought the dad was going to be dead, and then the dad showed up, and I was like, oh. And also there were a lot of moments in this movie that were genuinely really, really funny. Like, I don't know why when you first meet the stepsisters and they're, like, introducing the fact that they love Char and they, like, do their weird handshake, I was like, that's really funny. I thought when the evil king or like the evil uncle said image is everything before they get off the carriage, like I thought that was really funny. There was a bunch of moments like that where I was like, oh, this is actually really amusing in its own right.
Yeah. And there were like moments like that where it didn't play as well, I think. But it definitely had good moments too.
Definitely. Do you have any other things you appreciated that you want to remark on?
My last thing is the way that they were dancing at that party with the the giants party, basically. It was just the weirdest combination of choreography and music that I had ever seen, but I was really vibing, so I appreciated that.
It was weird. It was a very strong choice, and I was like, okay. I did like what they did with scale in that scene. Like, it wasn't really that dated looking. That was one other thing, is like I thought the CGI held up pretty well, especially the guy in the book. I was like, how does that look so good?
Yeah, it did.
That looked great. One more positive thing. I mean, there's more positive things, but like one more just thing to tack on is like, okay, we are inevitably going to spend some time here talking about the impact of Shrek on this movie because it's extremely present. But that being said, in all of the reviews of people being like, this movie wants to be Shrek, or like this movie is making too many references or like doing too much, like, did it feel like it was in the universe of Shrek? Yes. But did I really have a problem with it? No.
No, not really. Just the fact that it's not animated is
and like, I guess just reading all those critic reviews of people being like, this movie is a joke because of all of its cultural references. I actually thought the references were like a lot less heavy-handed than they are in Shrek. I thought it was fine. Like the medieval escalator. I was like, this is totally fine.
Yeah, it's just like a early 2000s mall reference. Like, I kind of liked that. I was going to say the only time I felt like, well, maybe not the only time, but one of the times I felt like the reference wasn't working for me, or the modern day reference, was when Prince Char said, like, don't believe everything you read in Medieval Teen.
Oh, I thought that was kind of funny.
Like,
I was okay with it.
I'm okay with it, but it just, like, at a certain point, I don't know if it was, like, it felt like a little derivative.
I think what you're just saying is that it was a little clunky. Sometimes the jokes were a bit clunky. I totally know what you're talking about. Like, it's in a specific world, and then someone will make, like, a weird reference to, like, a meme or some sort of, like, catchphrase, and you're like,
yeah,
who is this for? Is this for 14-year-olds, or is this for people?
I mean, there was, like, a straight-up OJ reference.
One other thing that I wished I had more of was, like, with Cary Elwes as the king. He's in the very beginning, and then he doesn't show up again until an hour in, and I was like, I kind of wish he was in it more, because whenever he's on screen, he's so good.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I wrote. I said, I wish that they had just had the uncle snooping around instead of the snake. Like, why? Like, maybe he had a busy schedule and they had to write in the snake, or maybe it was always the snake. But, like, I get why he as a king could not get away with, like, snooping around.
Well, he wasn't the king, though. He's
the like, uncle or whatever.
He's like he's like the advisor.
Yeah, I get that he's not king yet, but, like, I'm just saying, like, he's so famous, like, he probably couldn't get away with, like, snooping around.
Yeah, but he could have had a good disguise, and it could have been like a whole thing.
They could have done a lot more with him.
Maybe it was like a potential issue of him, like, accidentally stealing the show too much if they gave him that much more to do. I could see that happening.
And I did feel it really lag in the whole movie. It gets a little slow around it's like maybe 10 minutes past the midpoint. It gets really slow, and, like, you're so there and you're so with it for the first 40 minutes. Like, the world building and all of that, it's super entertaining. But yeah, I really felt it lag.
Yeah, I felt it lag a bit too before. Yeah, like when they were trying to get to the Hall of Records, that was kind of slow. And then after, like, Ella had already broken the spell, and then they were just, like, stalling, waiting to, like, get to the end, I was like, ugh, like, I know it's gonna be fine. Just let it be fine, you know? Like, the worst part of the movie has already been dealt with.
Right.
Or, like, the worst situation in the movie. I mean, when you're thinking of Ella, who's, like, really our priority still. And speaking of that, like, structural things, I just thought that it was really lame that Lucinda shows up randomly just by coincidence and then just, like, fucks it up more and then leaves. I was like,
yeah,
why even include her?
They didn't give her character any real stakes within the world. Like, they just gave her, like, this personality where she's, like, offended when people don't like her gifts, and, like, that's it. I have two major bones to pick.
Okay.
One being that they did not give Arita a real wrap-up. They don't even address the fact, they don't even give her anything. Like, she's just not in the movie until the very end, and she's just like, yeah, go, Ella, woo. And it's like, no, like, last time you saw her, she said she didn't want to see you ever again. So,
well, it also wasn't just that. It was literally, like, she said something extremely racist to her.
Yeah.
And then they never followed back up on it, which, can we just go into the problematic zone? Put a pin in the racism and we will come back.
Yeah,
Please say what you were going to say.
The way that the spell that is put on Ella works has a lot of plot holes. What happens when the demands conflict? Like, sometimes it works one way and sometimes it works another way. There is just, living in a magical world, I just don't see how her best friend wouldn't, like, she has an inkling of what's going on in the classroom, in the debate scene. She kind of gets it. Like, she's like, why is she doing everything she says? But apparently she doesn't get it.
Yeah.
And then when the new evil stepmom tells Ella to say all the awful things to her best friend, Lucinda's standing right there.
It's not Lucinda.
What's
it's
her
not
name?
Lucinda. Mandy.
Mandy. Lucinda's the actual fairy godmother.
Lucinda is the bad fairy, yeah.
Right. So Mandy is standing right there, and she knows what's going on fully, and she doesn't undo the action. And it's just
Or she doesn't just tell her not to do it.
Yeah, she doesn't just say,
Yeah.
Ella, don't tell her those things. Because the way that it works in other parts of the movie, she would then not do those things. So
Yeah.
it's very convenient, and it doesn't always work the way that is logical.
I just hate it in movies of this genre when it's like, you had the power all along inside of you. I'm always just like, can it not be that way?
I thought that it was really messed up that Ella's mom told her not to tell anyone about the spell. I was like, do you realize you're like dooming her for a life of hell because you said that?
Yeah.
Like, you literally demanded her not to tell anyone when that's like the one freedom that you want her to have. Like, I was just like, what is this?
Well, and couldn't Mandy have been like, tell people?
Yeah, couldn't she have been like, tell people about your curse or whatever?
Well, the thing is like, if she wasn't a character, because honestly, she didn't need to be there. She didn't do anything. But if
Yeah.
she wasn't a character, there would have been truly no one who knew. And I kind of feel like if no one knew about the curse at all, it would have added like a little bit of something.
Yeah, it would have added more legitimacy. Like, I don't think I would even bring up that point. And also, I just want to shout out to the fact that they were protesting at the, like, Prince Char, like, fan club event or whatever. That was really, it's, like, tacky
mall
and
opening.
weird.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
just
so
thought it was interesting.
I think that is a really good segue into the problematic areas. So
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like there is like a really uneven tone in the movie when it comes to like the actual trauma of racism.
Yeah.
Like there's moments where it's like taken really seriously and then other moments where it's not. And one thing that I wrote down, it was my first thing I wrote on the bad column, was that in the beginning of the movie they were like, Ella was cursed to be obedient, but she was extraordinarily kind. And then, like, the thing that they show to demonstrate her kindness is her, like, standing up for, like, the basic rights of her friend who is non-white. Mm-hmm. And, like, that's the whole... And so I was like, okay, yeah, if you're, like, a white person watching this, you're, like, there's a part of you that's, like, oh, wow, like, what a good white person or whatever. But it's like, that's just the bare minimum. Like, that shouldn't be noteworthy, you know?
That's not, like, being
like
an
that,
extraordinarily kind person.
It's like when white people become the hero of stories that have to do with racism.
It's
like,
a white
just...
It is technically a white savior movie. If you...
It is.
Like, you know, just because it's this strange blend of real racism, like, rooted in our, like, in our world, and then ogre.
The actress and, like, the character to a certain extent, I mean, they say that Arita is Aorthian, and the actress is
a made up,
yeah, which is made up
nationality,
which is made up, yeah, but she's a human. There's like humanoid racism at each other, and the weird thing is that like Arita being discriminated against is presented as way more about the trauma of Ella being forced to discriminate than Arita being discriminated against. Like, we don't even really get to see that much of her reaction, of Arita's reaction to, like, literally being told, like, I would never be friends with an Aorthian. We see, like, Anne Hathaway's, like white tears
struggle
about it.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, it's a weird scene, and it's really sad when you're a kid, and then they just never talk about it ever again. And the only racism that they ever talk about again is against ogres, elves, and one other one, giants. Really, the whole movie has like this political through line where Prince Char is like, I don't know anything about politics. He doesn't really seem to know anything about anything, honestly. And he's like Ella's schooling him on politics and like encouraging him to become a better diplomat, and like somehow he doesn't know about the fact that there are giants being like quite literally enslaved in fields of agriculture with whipping, and then it's just a little,
it really had me going like
yeah.
Like, it's so to have Anne Hathaway in this role where she's simultaneously the white savior for she's doing the classic white savior plotline with Arita, but she's doing the like woman educating clueless man role as well, and it's like a lot.
It is a lot, and it also feels weirdly timely.
Mm-hmm. It kind of does.
It's a little timely.
Yeah. I mean, as far as like white women go, we can speak on this.
Yeah, it's true. That is true.
I think there are a lot of white women that are liberal or whatever that feel that they kind of inhabit a similar position.
Or like the whole philosophy of like needing to have like a really affirming and gentle hand with white men that don't know better, like trying to, or like feeling this need to like leverage your social clout and like privilege with them to get them to see that stuff is wrong. And being super like gentle and being like, you're such a special boy, I know you'll get it, is just, it is timely.
It's a bit timely. It's a bit spicy.
It's a little spicy if you want to make it spicy. When Char is proposing to Ella,
I know,
and Ella's supposed to kill him, and she's like, no, because she doesn't want to kill him, and he's like, is it because of my politics? Because it doesn't matter.
I wrote that down. That line killed me. Is it because of my politics? She's like, she's got the dagger to his back, and he's like, I'm not a Republican. Like, it's so funny.
Yeah, he was literally like, I'm not a racist, don't kill me, like, please marry me. Like,
yeah.
At the very end, like when Ella and Char get married and they're like doing the toast, literally the only wrap up we get of the anti-Aorthian racism, which is lumped in with all the other racism, is to a nation of equals, while holding up the cup. And then as I say nation of equals, it like shows Arita and she's like vibing. And I'm like, okay,
does
so
that not feel like the kind of band, like, I'm just gonna bring it to our real life. I'm just gonna bring it to reality. Like, does it not feel like the same type of band-aid that is put over a country when like we have Biden as a president? Like, it's like, now we're all equal, but like literally nothing reflects that, and like nothing is like genuinely being done, and it's just everyone's supposed to be like vibing. Like, that's what they want.
Yeah.
That's what they want.
They're like, we have a white liberal queen. Look at her. This is a nation of equals.
That's what they're preaching. Like, and it's like you could come up with such a conspiracy if you wanted to. Like, they're like sprinkling that through the media of the youth, so they will be like subservient to
yes.
Just to bring it way back, they do also literally say, you're not like other girls in this movie.
They do. They do say you're not like other girls in this movie. And, you know, maybe let's use that as our segue into whatever we do or do not want to say regarding, like, what this movie says or does not say about, like, consent / autonomy. It kind of feels like we don't get to know that much about how Ella actually feels about her curse, so it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, obviously she doesn't like it, but like that's kind of all we know.
I don't think that the lesson to be taken from this movie has to do with like, if you're gonna take something from this movie, I don't think it has to do with politics, clearly. Like, the political through line. Like, I came up with one, like, solid concept of, like, the lesson or something that you could apply to your life. So I think there's a good lesson to be learned from this movie about people pleasing. Like, every time that Ella needs saved, it's a consequence of her having not said or done what she wanted to do. And I just thought it created, like, kind of an interesting dynamic between her and Prince Char, where it's like, it makes for a codependent, like, relationship, you know what I'm saying? Like, I realize that she does not have choice, so that is what makes it not fully apply in this movie. But just in general, like, if somebody is not saying how they feel, then, like, the other person is constantly gonna feel like they need to, like, fix things or, like, save things. And I feel like if anything, that would be, like, a lesson, but yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, thankfully in their in Char and Ella's future marriage, that will not be a thing now because of
she can say what she wants
being gone. I did have a thought, like, as we were watching it and, like, when they got married in the end, I did just sort of think, like, wow, up until 2004, like, new movies targeted at little girls still included marriage.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that doesn't really happen anymore.
No, it doesn't. But also, like, this was a fairy tale, so...
Yeah, well, that's what I was also gonna say, is that I just feel like the viability of, like, fantasy-based live-action movies for kids, like how you were saying, like, it just isn't a thing anymore.
Do I really want to see a new version? Like, there is no such thing as a new fairy tale. Like, that's not a thing.
It's like, do you want a girl boss in your fairy tale? Like, you don't want a girl boss in your fairy tale.
And we've had our entire slew of movies that try to subvert that already. Like, that.
And it's painful. It's cringy.
Wave. Yeah, like, that wave has already been done. So it's like, there's, like, nothing to do with them anymore. Like,
that's really true. That kind of reminds me of, like, there's, like, the painful ones, and then there's, like, the better ones. And when I think of the better ones, I think of, like, Tangled as a good example. Like, it's kind of in conversation with it. Shrek was, like, the first one, and then it's kind of gone from there. But, like, yeah, it is kind of tired for the time being. Overall, though, in spite of the problems that we have uncovered with Ella Enchanted, I think by and large, it's a really fun movie. It's really entertaining. It has good stakes to it. I think that even if we, as a 23-year-old and 25-year-old women can, like, apply our own experiences to this movie now, I think that it's not, like, a harmful thing for kids to watch. And also, like, if this was, like, if you're our age and this was, like, your first exposure to, like, racial prejudice or, like, violence, like, in a close relationship, like, with Arita and Ella, it's not the best, but it's not the worst. And if it's your first thing you see, I don't think it's going to, like, warp your brain forever, you know?
At the end of the day, no. It was mostly a business, decision.
As we have learned today.
Yeah,
this is an economics podcast.
We should really, you know, those, like, YouTube ads for, like, master classes? Yeah. It's like the really uninformed guide to economics.
By us.
Ella
Enchanted, great watch, still holds up, is not harmful. Is it still a good movie? I think yes.
Yeah, I think so.
It's very of its time, though.
Yeah, and I think it does get slow, and I think that the final number was underwhelming. some of the extras were just like not dancing correctly, and then like the ogres were just like
Oh my god, that reminds me of the most one of the worst parts of that number, which was like it was all smooth sailing, it was pretty much fine, and then they like, I mean, it was bad, but it wasn't like offensive, and then they like rolled out the like Edgar in the wheelchair, and I was like this just took a dark turn for a second here.
Yeah.
And then they just rolled them away. I love it in production numbers where they just present characters without comment. I'm like, beautiful.
Like, what is going on?
This is storytelling. This is storytelling.
First and foremost, we love Anne Hathaway. Show her some love.
Yes.
Today.
Yes. Anne Hathaway deserves her flowers.
She is getting them.
We'll see you next week. Let us know if you have any more recommendations, questions, comments, concerns, hot topics. You know what? I'm also going to say this. If you have a hot take about any of the movies that we've talked about and you want to send us a voice memo expressing them, we would love to receive them. You can just email them to twopinkpictures@gmail.com. And maybe you will hear yourself in an episode. I love hearing from people. So
Me too.
Please just send it in and we will do what we can to make it happen.
Yes. It can be about any past episode we've done. I think it would be cute if we had a little segment where like we like reacted to that.
Yes, definitely. I think that would be good. It would be like Dear Abby, but like with movie opinions.
Yes.
And we just react to them. Thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye. You can find more from us at evergreenpodcast.com/sleepover-cinema and keep up with all our latest creative projects at twopinkpictures.com. If you want to watch our show as well as listen, we're on YouTube too, yay! Search Sleepover Cinema or go to the link tree in our Instagram bio. We're on Instagram and Twitter at twopinkpictures and would love to hear from you there. We're also on TikTok at Sleepover Cinema, and that's really where the party is at.
It's true. And if you like Sleepover Cinema, if it brings back evocative memories of your childhood or your adolescence or maybe even just babysitting in the early 2000s, please share an episode with a few friends. Sleepover Cinema is a production of Evergreen Podcasts, produced, edited, and engineered by us, Hannah and Audrey Leach. Sleepover Cinema is mixed by Sean Rule Hoffman, and theme music is by Josh Perlman Hall. Special thanks to executive producers Michael D'Aloia and David Moss.
We'll chat again soon.
We'll chat again soon.